Hello, I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP and Executive Editor at Large at Black Enterprise. Welcome to another edition of Your Money, Your Life. This episode of Your Money, Your Life is sponsored by Prudential. And we have a great topic that fits right in with the theme of the show, which is funding your retirement while leaving a legacy. And not only do we have a great topic, we have the perfect person to have a discussion about that topic. We're talking about veteran retirement columnist, money columnist, USA Today, Black Enterprise, you name it. Our guest has written for it and has been a leader in business journalism in general and in financial journalism in particular. Please welcome to the show, Rodney Brooks. Rodney, man, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for inviting me, Al.
Well, first of all, let me congratulate you on your new book, Fixing the Racial Wealth Gap, which obviously is it was always a priority for us in this financial journalism space, but clearly is even more important in the wake of what we've seen over the last few years in terms of the Black wealth gap. Talk to me about the book, why you chose now to write it, what you expect people to get out of it. Just talk to me a little bit about the book, and congratulations on releasing the book.
Thank you. Well, I've always been sort of a de facto financial advisor to young people coming up, and when they come to USA Today, I basically make them sign up for the 401k because you know what the numbers are when it comes to Black folks and 401k. So my friends and family have been after me for years to do a book, not just on financial planning, but since Black folks have such different, since we're so different, one specifically aimed at Black Americans. And during the social justice protests, it was, a lot was said about the racial wealth gap. So it made sense to merge both topics, because before you give financial advice and talk about why, talk about our numbers, why Black wealth is 1/10 of white wealth, family wealth, 171,000 versus 70, versus 17,000. You got to say, how did we get here? And how we got there is all of the racism and the discrimination, So I start out in the book talking about the things, everything. Some people know, some they don't. People know about Tulsa, and I did a story where I was talking about the basically reparations, and I mentioned Tulsa, and I said that happened in dozens of other American cities. Well, the editor called me on and said, "Did this really happen in dozens of other cities?" I said, I could have said hundreds, because it happened in like every major city in America where we had built up Black wealth, and white mobs basically burned it down, took it away from us. And so how could we be anywhere near where we need to be if we had things like that? Our wealth was violently taken away from us. And then you have things like, the Black GIs coming back from World War II, where the GI Bill was passed and the president pushed basically implementation down to these white Southern states, the racist states. So they found a way to not let Black GIs get a benefit of GI benefits. Okay, and housing wealth is a big part of our wealth. You know that. So you had things like Levittown that was built in Pennsylvania, where these white GIs were able to settle with their families and build household home wealth, and Black GIs could not live there. In fact, they had covenants banning Black folks from living there. So you could go on like that. You could go on incident after incident, and then you sort of see why we here, how we got here. There are many, talk about the Black farmers and how the Department of Agriculture basically discriminated against them for years, and that's still going on. So, it's just thing after thing, and you sort of add it up, and then you look at the things that are going on now, you know, with if you look at the appraisal process, you have these couples that basically got these low appraisals. One in California, it was like they got a really low appraisal. It was and they basically took everything black out of the house, including the pictures and the art, and they had their white neighbor move their pictures and art in, and the appraisal went up by $500,000.
Yes.
So it's still going on.
So when we talk systemic, that's what we're talking about,
right?
And I tell on my both this show and my other show, I always tell people, if you want a crash course on how we got here in terms of the racial wealth gap, there's some great resources, but one of them is Boss: The Black Experience in Business, which is a documentary, and you see over and over again, we build up a certain amount of wealth, and then either through violence, public policy, law, it's systematically stripped away, and it's like pushing this boulder up the hill only to have it roll back down on us again, and we're starting over and over and over again. So you're absolutely right.
Yes.
So obviously your book is focused on acknowledging those things, and not just your book, but your career. Again, as a de facto financial advisor, as just one of the best business and financial journalists I know. I count you as a mentor and a role model. You've been focused all your career, including with this book, on solutions. And that's what Your Money, Your Life is all about. It's about financial wellness and saying, okay, this is where we are. Here's what we need to do. So let's talk to me a bit, about funding your retirement, which is something else that I think African Americans in general, we kind of either wait too late to get started, or we'll put funding our children's education ahead of funding retirement. But funding your retirement while leaving a legacy meaning wealth to build on, multi-generational wealth. We're talking about estate planning and other issues that make this a multi-generational discussion and not just a today discussion.
So the easiest part is funding your retirement if you're working for a company that has a 401 plan or an agency that has a 403. But even with the company contributions, you find people, even educated Black people, who don't think it's important to make that contribution, or say, I don't have the money, I can't afford it. But think about where you end up if you don't do what you need to do. It's like 38% of Black seniors depend on Social Security for 90% of their income. And that compares with 28% of white Americans, because they didn't save. And that's not to criticize, because we know there are reasons why they can't save, But when you have the opportunity and you have a company willing to match, there is no reason for you to not make a contribution. And part of the problem is that companies these days, when I was with USA Today in the earlier years, we had HR departments, so they would basically help you sign up for the 401k. And basically walk you through the process. Well, these days, by the time I left, a new hire would be given an 800 number, say, call this, figure it out yourself. and so we don't have the guidance. And that's why I stress so much that you should try to find a financial advisor. We always, people think they cost, yes, they do cost some money, but people think they're only for rich people, and they're not. But also, if you don't have the money, there are so many who are doing pro bono sessions at community centers and churches. But it is so good to have somebody from outside of your family who's going to give you some advice and put it all together, because the retired 401k, we talked about estate planning, all of that stuff comes together in a financial plan, and you can't really focus on one part without focus on any other. So and then getting to the estate plan, we have we see so many stars, even Black stars who dying without wills. And what James Brown, what did it take? 15 years for for his estate to be settled. And if you, it's important to have a will, and I always recommend a trust. So, but people don't realize that dying without a will, it's basically let somebody else is going to determine how your assets are going to be distributed. Okay.
And so much of those assets are lost when you talk about 15 years to work it out to legal fees.
Right.
Like lawyers are going to get paid whether you pay them up front to do the will and the estate plan or on the back end because your assets are stuck in probate and you're trying to work it out. Sooner or later, that your resources are getting drained or family resources are getting drained.
Right. And they have, I don't usually recommend it. But you could do a will online these days. There's no reason not to have a will. And there's no reason not to leave a legacy for your children. For so long, we've got generation after generation, and one of the big advantages white families have is that their inheritance is like 10 times. The average inheritance of a white family is like 10 times that of a Black family, actually maybe 20 times. But, because there is not much to leave. And the other thing, part of the estate planning, Al, is we don't think about insurance. A friend of mine who's a financial advisor said Black people need to stop doing these $5,000 insurance policies, just enough to put them into the ground, and do $100,000 policies to leave something for their children and their grandchildren. Yeah,
Rodney, you're hitting all the notes that we stress on this show. This episode of Your Money, Your Life is brought to you by Prudential. Prudential knows the importance of having a rock in your life. Everyone needs a rock. A rock can help turn the far-fetched into the within reach. When you have one, you can reach your potential, your dreams, and your goals. And when it comes to your financial goals, Prudential is the rock you can rely on. With their knowledgeable financial professionals, Prudential can help you get to new heights. Plan, invest, insure, retire. Visit Prudential.com. Who's your rock? Listen, Rodney, like I said, you led perfectly into the subjects that we talk about on this show. If you can, as we work through trying to get people focused on retirement planning, connecting that to legacy, connecting that to multi-generational wealth, the importance of insurance, the importance of trust. What elements of your book do you think people, obviously they should read the whole book, but what are key elements of your book you think people should focus on to get in the right frame of mind of really funding a retirement in order to leave a legacy?
Well, the one is understanding, basically understanding interest rate and compound interest. Okay, so you could understand how the earlier you start, the more you start getting interest on interest, and so the earlier you start building that wealth, the more you're going to end up with. So you don't want to wait until 50.
Right.
I was doing an interview with a lady who was really proud of her. She had put her daughter through college. She has an Ivy League education. She said, but I didn't save anything for retirement, and I'm 50 years old. And it's like, so what can I do? At that point, there are only so many options, and the most likely is that you're going to delay retirement because you got to keep working, because we already talked about, the average Social Security payment was $1,500 a month. That is not enough to keep your lifestyle. So you're going to have to keep working. But the problem with that is that, Black Americans have so many health issues that many times we can't keep working, especially if you're doing one of those, you're doing manual labor, those hard jobs. You have Black women especially are caregivers, and they have to leave the job market. So you have to do it when you can. You have to set aside money. But I think it all starts with that. First that chapter on how to find a financial advisor. Okay, find a financial advisor. Find someone who can help you, even if it's pro bono or whatever. Do that. And I think, something we all overlook, I think it's a credit. And the importance of having good credit is a chapter that the more you delve into it, the more you say, wow, um, you know, um, let's,
I always say, if I knew then what I know now, and you
right,
talked
right.
about waiting into your 50. If I would talk to young people, say if I had to do it all over again, I really kind of waited until I was in my early 30s before I really. And thankfully, at Black Enterprise, we had our 401k back then,
Yeah,
and I got in right away. But it was true. We're having to convince people, no, this is something you have to do. So I
right.
always tell young people, don't wait until you're 30. Do it when you're 20 if you can. Certainly do it when you're 22, 23, because to your point about compound interest, the earlier you start, the less money it takes. People say, oh, I can't afford it, but you don't need that much, because the time is actually more important to you than actually how much money you're putting aside if you got that long, 50-year runway. And your point about the health issues, and I'm very serious about my health. And part
Yes.
of the reason I'm so serious about it is because I'm in that category. I got to extend my earning years to make up for what I didn't do between age, say 20 and my early 30s. I'm trying to pick up extra years, extra earning years to make up. And everybody's not going to have that luxury. I don't know if that's guaranteed. So when we say health is wealth, when you look at Black men dying prematurely and Black women living longer, but not necessarily in the best of health, that all still goes into this larger equation of trying to, close this racial wealth gap.
Yes, and so one of the chapters I thought was pretty important was basically talk to your children. Parents in general don't talk, but Black parents, it's almost like a taboo subject. I don't think I ever knew how much my father earned, and what things cost when we were coming up. And I talked to a financial planner who goes into schools in city neighborhoods, and he's like, these kids don't even know what it costs to pay a cable bill. They have no sense. So I talked to a business owner um, um, in New York, Queens, and she's talked about how her mother made her write out the checks, so she knew exactly what was coming in, uh, and and she knew not to ask for anything because she knew there was no money left, right? So those discussions, and kids will soak that information up. So I don't even say wait until they're a certain age. Kindergarten, if you start talking to them, they'll start getting those values, and they'll start understanding those things. So
Rodney, my rule with my kids and with kids in general, but certainly my kids who are all now grown and on their own, is the minute they can ask for things and they can count, it's time. As soon as they can say, I want that, and I understand that 1 + 1 is 2 and 5 + 5 is 10, they're ready to start absorbing it. And you're right. My mother, I was raised by a divorced single mother on public assistance who at the time, she eventually got some college education, but she had an 8th grade education when I was born. She only could teach me what she could teach me. But I'm an editor at Black Enterprise. I was like, how can I allow my children not to understand some of these principles? And you're right. It has to, when you're talking about, closing the wealth gap, and we're talking about multi-generational, we have to make this discussion a discussion from early on. And I'm proud to say my kids were way more money savvy when they were 17 or 18. My oldest daughter knew her credit score when she got out of college. She's always managed it well, but it was because of that foundation that was built, between me and their mothers when they were little. And I think that's a key element, Rodney, to what we have to do.
Well, you talked about credit scores. So, some of the numbers are like 50% of white Americans have a credit score of 700 or more. And that compares to 21% of blacks. And, and credit, people, our lives are so dependent on that. From the interest rates you're going to get for a mortgage or a car, and those increased, how much the cost will increase if you have a low credit score, to even getting an apartment. We need to know what our credit scores are and manage it, and know how to bring it up. So I devoted a chapter to credit scores, because that's one of the reasons we end up paying more for everything, because of higher interest rates.
One of the things I love about your book, and I always admired about you, Rodney, is that again, even before the current conversation about the America's racial wealth gap and closing the wealth gap, you've always kind of connected those dots between credit, budgeting, retirement, of course. I mean, you really, dove deep into that during the course of your career, and what this means for the long-term, multi-generational financial health of Black America. And to me, this book is kind of a culmination of all of that, which is probably why you've been pressed by people to write this book over the years. In the time that we have left, if there's one thing, well, two things. One thing you want people to walk away from our conversation with, that hopefully will get them to take action, not just be better educated, but take action on this, what would that be? And two, I want to make sure people know where to find you, where to find the book, because obviously we're not going to get it all in a half-hour conversation, but this is a jumping off point, hopefully, for people to take some action to really fix the racial wealth gap in their own lives and families.
Well, the one thing I would tell them is basically start saving. We know a fair amount of people don't have access to a 401k, but one, I would say, part of saving is first have an emergency plan before you actually start saving. I mean, an emergency budget is what I'm talking about. So, so when the car breaks down, where you need to replace the hot water heater, it's the studies have shown that most people can't afford a $400 emergency, and that's Black and white. But so save enough money so you have an emergency fund, and then start saving money that will help contribute to your retirement. Because if you wait, the longer you wait, the harder it is. I mean, once you in your 20s, you want to, it's when you start, basically families are going to get in the way, of saving. Once you start buying cars and houses. So when I hear of someone in their 20s who has like maxed out their 401k, and is sophisticated about money, I'm really proud of and give them props. But I would say, think about retirement. Think about even if you're in your 20s, think about what's going to happen if you don't have any money in your 50s and 60s. So that's the first thing I would say. Focus on retirement, before you get that new car, that you or trade in for a new car. Set some money aside and just watch it grow. And the thing is, don't be, Black folks are really conservative when it comes to investing. Right. And so we want you to invest more in some stocks that are going to grow. And that's why we don't want you, if you're not comfortable picking stocks, don't want you picking them. But that's where that financial advisor comes in. So that's the second thing. Go find a financial advisor, go find one that you can relate to, you feel comfortable with, and there's the Association of African American Advisors. So it's called Quad A, and they have a listing city by city that you can go to, and some of them will do some pro bono work. So, but that's key, somebody who you can learn from, who's going to help you get to that next step. Yeah.
And to your point, Rodney, there are a lot more resources, certainly that have emerged over the last 20 years than there were when I was in my 20s. I know that, whether they're churches, they're community organizations that will at least get you, you get access to a free credit report, and you can also get free financial and credit counseling. And if all that does for you is to set up a budget that you can live by, and you only do that once a year, you're way ahead of the game.
Right. And, many churches, Black churches now, they have financial ministries.
Yes.
So you could go there and somebody and learn just you could go and learn from your fellow church members. They usually bring in people, but and it's not financial education is not taught in schools as much as it should be, but it's a growing trend. But it's still not in many inner city schools or Black schools. So we want to push to do that. About Ariel Academy in Chicago, where they start teaching these kids in the kindergarten, and by the time they graduate, they know how to invest in stocks. So it's not too young. Talk to your children.
Another great organization that's done great work is World of Money, which was I knew from New York, Sabrina Lamb, but they're also out working in Chicago as well. So you're right, it's just never too early to have this conversation if we're really talking about closing the wealth gap, because it's going to take multiple generations to do it. It took us multiple generations to get here. It's not going to happen in our generation, but if we teach what we need to teach, we will close that gap over time.
Yes.
What's the best way for our audience to stay in touch with you, whether it's on social or whatever, and certainly how should they go about making sure they get access to Fixing the Racial Wealth Gap, your latest book?
I have a website. It's www.rodneyabrooks.com. Everything I write, I post there. I also have videos with financial planners and, of Black, white, all kinds of financial planners. And they talk about a variety of subjects. And you can buy the book there. And it is on Amazon. You can find it. So Fixing the Wealth Gap, Rodney A. Brooks. Actually, there's also a white Rodney A. Brooks who is a robotics expert who is actually a lot more famous than I am.
Well, I know you. I ain't never heard of him. I know you. So you're the famous one. Listen, Rodney, thank you so much for joining us on Your Money, Your Life. Again, congratulations, and thank you for writing Fixing the Racial Wealth Gap. And I urge our audience to check out Rodney, go to his website, get the book, but get the wealth of resources. We're talking about self-education. Rodney's laying it out there for us for not only for ourselves, but to share with others, and especially young people. Rodney, thank you for being a guest on the show.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.
This is Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP, Executive Editor at Large at Black Enterprise, and you just listened to another great edition of Your Money, Your Life. This edition of Your Money, Your Life is brought to you by Prudential. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.